So as you have seen on the leaflet and I guess on the screen, um, there is a theme for today, and I think you have it every Sunday. So if you change during the night, Saturday to Sunday, if you change your idea, it's not easy. But why? Deepening our vision. I thought about it with David, and there was a question between what should we choose? Deepening our vision or broadening our vision? Broadening is kind of open-minded person, and deepening maybe a bit more shy, going to the roots, and the roots, we don't see the roots. Broadening is pretty visible. And by the way, is it correct to speak of either broadening or deepening our vision with the gospel of the day? Is it our vision? I guess we all have a vision. We've had a vision for years, for decades. Has it really changed something? Or should it be, could it be, broadening like the branches of a big tree, or deepening like the roots, our practice, the way to put our vision into practice? We have a kind of documentary in France, very interesting, had it for decades already, called Des racines, roots, et des ailes, roots and wings. And it's suddenly as if the tree was starting to fly. Very nice image. So I leave you with those two options, either broadening or deepening our vision, why not? But mostly our practice. So how did you react to the text that we have heard and read this morning in the gospel? We don't have a Bible study around the table. We don't have time for that. But what came to you? Which images? A question maybe. Oh, this lady arriving from the region of Manchester. This Jesus, he is not very kind with ladies. Woman, he doesn't utter a word. Go straight. The other day in Grand Bay, we were walking back to the car, and a young man came to ask money. I went on silent. But I didn't feel very comfortable. Although I knew that behind me there was my wife. I knew she would stop and start talking with this young man. But my attitude was not a good attitude. Instead of going like this, I could have told him, ask the lady behind. It would have been so different. But he did it. He was shy, maybe deepening his roots. Will you be angry if I ask you something? And he talked about him. He had to leave his parents, no work, waiting for 10 days. And it was a nice sharing. She gave him something and quite a bit of advice. He's very good in advice. And he was really listening in a very interesting way. So your reaction with what happens in this passage of the gospel, is it normal? Is it usual? How can we broaden? How can we deepen? Or could it be neither broadening nor strengthening, but maybe shaking our vision, questioning our vision? I don't know what is your vision. I can guess partly about the gospel, the sharing of the gospel, the receiving of the gospel. But sometimes our vision is shaken. When we have, for instance, different people coming on a Sunday morning, you are very quiet, you know. They're not as quiet in Pointe-au-Piment. They're pretty lively and expressive. But if people a bit noisy came, I remember once years ago, I was pretty, I had been asked for a wedding, and the wedding was for a couple of bikers, motards, that's right? Bikers. I arrived to church with the biker. I was in the, comment on appelle ça, in the sidecar, the first and only time in my ministry. And when I was preaching, suddenly the bikers would say, yes, that's right, and would applaud. Only one time in a ministry of 40 years, you know. And how do we adapt? By the way, does Jesus adapt to the situation? Doesn't seem to be the case. So there's something of our classical vision that is shaken. Could it be so changing our vision? Converting our way to look at others? But how? In which direction? Is it broadening or is it narrowing the vision? Because in the text, that's pretty impressive. First of all, Jesus is not in Israel, as we are not in Switzerland. He's in a foreign country. He must have an idea about the rules, but he's in a foreign country. He doesn't come as an ambassador. He hasn't been sent by the missionary department. He's just there. Why? We don't know. No idea. What for? We don't know either. He is there. Okay? In another gospel, I will come to it, Mark, he comes really in a hidden way. As if we hadn't said we are a pastoral couple, you know. We're just tourists, we're okay. Don't bother about us. No. He's simply there and we don't know why. With his disciples, and, well, it's Jesus. And at least one person knows that he's here. Who is it? A Canaanite? It was a totally old-fashioned word, like in the English Bible of the King James, you know, translation. A very old word. Nobody would say that. In that region of Tyre and Sidon, Tyre et Sidon in French, that word was not used. It was used centuries and centuries before. So why does Matthew, addressing Jewish people or people of Jewish origins, use that word? It sends everybody back to the Old Testament when this population was occupying the territory of Palestine. And when we heard the story of Joseph, when they came back and conquered the land, then there were the Canaanites, and there were opponents. They were really the figure of pagan people. So she's a Canaanite, and she comes, and Jesus keeps silence, doesn't utter a word. So our friend from Manchester is a bit shocked, you know, and maybe other ladies. I don't know for us men, but in this period of all the questions about genre, my goodness, it's very hard. Why? Jesus is addressing a Jewish audience. And Matthew adapts to the situation. He changes one or two details for the scene to explain what happens. And already saying that Jesus has left the territory to go to this strange region of Tyre and Sidon, was quite a shock. And so he must introduce things differently. All the responsibility, so to say, all the initiative is on this lady. How does she call him? In Creole, it's garçon de David, fils, son of David. Have mercy. You can find it in the book of Psalms. It's typically Jewish. It's typically the Jewish way to address an important person with a messianic hope. So this little lady could be from Poitou-Piment, actually, arriving from a small place and having such a good theology. It's very impressive. She is the one who makes the effort, who knows things very well. And so, this is quite a challenge for Jesus. So the story ends very well. That's fortunate. Happy ending. But it could have been different. Jesus keeps silent. Not the disciples, nor the woman. She's talking all along. You know, like this other woman who goes to see a judge who is not fair. And she keeps on. She wants to have what she came for. She is determined. So she talks a lot. And the disciple at the end, headache. Please, stop her. They had made the decision. We don't want to have to do anything with her anymore. Jesus keeps silent. He doesn't despise this woman. He doesn't accept what the disciples say. It's a real question. It's a serious matter. What should I do of my Jewish theology? I have not come for pagans. I have come for the lost sheep of Israel. And remember, we're in chapter 15, it was in chapter 10, when the disciples are called, he gives them power to heal and to deliver and go mainly and mostly to the people of Israel, not to others. This was the mainstream idea. And he keeps on it. And then he says, the bread is for the children, not for the dogs. Dogs were a bit despised. And we can imagine that these were the dogs who had an owner, not those Mauritian dogs everywhere that you can hear at 5:30 in the morning. The dogs had an owner, but they wouldn't be fed first. First, the children. The children are the nation of Israel. They have received the blessings. Last Sunday, it was Romans 9 in the readings about all the blessings received by Israel. And Paul said, I would like to be cursed for their blessing. And you also heard in Romans 11 this morning that it's a blessed people and they will have the gospel in return. So the bread is for the children, not for the dogs. The woman is not finding a solution to go beyond the difficulty. No. She's keeping on her own faith. And her faith is, you are true. It is actually the case. I'm not a child. I'm not a child of Israel. I'm one of those dogs. But the dogs receive the crumbs falling out of the table. She's not upset. It's what belongs to reality. And at that moment, Jesus can say, wow, what a faith! What a faith! Wonderful. And we can think of other situations. The two blind people, it's Matthew 8, it's Matthew 20, they all asked Jesus, Son of David. So she's in a good company. They were Jewish. You see? It's only the second time that somebody comes to Jesus for a person who is sick. Because there is a sick person in the story, we shouldn't forget her. The other person was Jairus, leader of a synagogue. There, it's a woman, Canaanite. And it's the only time in that gospel that a woman addresses Jesus. And she called him Lord. Do you have it here? Sorry. It's a bit further in the text, I can tell you. From verse 25. You have it? It's a very strange translation, actually. I think it's an English or a British or English of the Queen translation. Sir. Okay, I'm joking, sorry. Lord, you are the Lord. And this woman recognized Jesus as the Son of David and as the Lord. So, brothers and sisters, that's pretty shaking. That's pretty converting our vision to see how this woman was ready almost to become a Jewish and really recognizing in Jesus the Lord. Quite a discovery. And so, your faith. There's another story where Jesus recognizes the face of a non-Jewish, and it's also in Matthew, always Matthew addressing Jewish people, with the Roman officer. We say centurion in French. He says, okay, I need you, but you don't need to come. I'm a boss. I ask somebody, you do it, he does. You do it, he does. So just say a word. I have never seen such a faith in Israel. So Jesus has principles. In those principles, it's a bit shaking for us, but the peculiar blessings to Israel are still the key of understanding. But when somebody shows faith, it's okay. He receives that. And so it becomes possible for Christians of Jewish origins to receive it and to be a little bit shaken. Because when the gospel, the written gospel, arrived in the communities, these were Jewish Christians, not of pagan origins. And this was quite a challenge for them to hear it, because they knew that in Antiochus and in other places, Thessalonica and so, there were other Christians, or so-called Christians, who were not Jewish, not circumcised. Should you accept them? How great is your faith? Is it deepening our vision? Broadening our vision? Shaking our vision? What is it? Let me finish with a very, very short comparison with the Gospel of Mark. That was the start. Less Jewish. Jesus comes, he doesn't want to be recognized. In secret. All the rest is pretty equivalent, except about the lady. He entered the house and didn't want anyone to know it. Yet he could not keep his presence secret because he's the light. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia, and she was in the region of Tyre. What a mix, as we have here in Mauritius, as you have here in St. Columba, all these differences, migrant 3 times, and this super stranger meets another super stranger who is Jewish and who comes from heaven. And strangely enough, these two can meet. There is like a kind of battle between them, but at the end, he recognizes not his faith here, but he says, upon your word, your daughter is healed. And so the final question, to shake the coconut tree and to have good fruits today, is who is the evangelist in this story? I leave it to you. God bless you.